Good afternoon, I'm Kacky Walton. Checking on the arts is made possible by contributing listeners and the Orpheum Theater. The Emerald Theater Company and New Moon Theater Company are partnering to present two powerful productions, The Laramie Project and The Laramie Project 10 Years Later. Emerald Theater Company's The Laramie Project opened last weekend at TheaterWorks, 2085 Monroe, and they're doing more performances this weekend, Friday and Saturday at 8, with a Sunday matinee at 2. New Moon Theater Company's production of The Laramie Project 10 Years Later opens this Friday at the Evergreen Theater on Poplar and runs through June the 28th with 8 o'clock performances Fridays and Saturdays and a Sunday matinee at 2. They're also doing a talk back following the Saturday, June the 20th performance. Gene Elliott heads up New Moon Theater Company. He joins me in the studio this afternoon with one of the actors in Laramie 10 Years Later, Matthew Hamner. Nice to have you both here. Thanks for coming out.
Great to be here.
I know the Laramie Project has been performed here in Memphis, but I think it's so cool that you're teaming up with Emerald Theater Company to present the sequel, as it were.
It just seemed like a natural connection. And actually, it was an interesting way it kind of happened. We were talking about just doing the Laramie Project. That was we were just going to partner up, maybe do a month-long run of just the Laramie Project. And then when I went online to check on the rights, I saw the 10 Years Later. I was like, oh, this is what we got. Here's what we got to do. So it's kind of evolved from that, and I'm so glad it did. They're two great productions.
Well, now you're directing Laramie 10 Years Later. Jen Nicholas Smith of Emerald Theater Company is directing the original Laramie Project. He couldn't be with us today because of work obligations. But, I mean, this is the perfect show for his theater company to do. Mm-hmm. You want to tell everybody a little bit about Emerald? Yeah,
Emerald Theater Company they do alternative plays, but primarily focusing on the gay and lesbian themed shows. And Den has wanted to direct this play forever. They've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. So he's just giddy. He's having so much fun. Yeah, I've popped in to check on them, and they're having a blast.
Well, if people don't know what we're talking about, we automatically assume everybody knows what the Laramie Project is. The origins stem from a tragic incident that happened in Laramie, Wyoming. Why don't we remind people what that was?
I'll do a little bit of talking.
Okay, Matthew.
Hello, Kacky.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Essentially what happened is Matthew Shepard back in, what was it now, 1988?
98.
98. Oh, not 88, but 98. He was essentially beaten and murdered because he was gay by Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. And then this theater group called the Tectonic Theater Project, they went to Laramie to actually interview people to find out what their viewpoints were about what was happening. Mm-hmm. And then from there they wrote this play about this very tragic incident. And,
so Moises Kaufman and the Tectonic Theater Company.
Right,
yeah.
Yes.
So we're hearing the actual things that people said to Moises Kaufman and his company people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's very interesting as an actor because usually as actors you do plays and you think of them as fiction, and the language you're getting is really coming from the imagination of the playwright, and there's a little bit of that in here. But for the most part, you're speaking the words that were actually said by the people there, and as an actor, it's I think a tremendous responsibility to be as authentic as you possibly can in relaying all these different viewpoints of these characters that you are playing.
So, you would think with the Laramie Project that, I mean, this was horrible. He was such a beautiful, beautiful kid, and he was essentially kidnapped and taken out in the middle of nowhere in a prairie and tied to a fence post and left there to die. Mm-hmm. And he lived a few days, but he ultimately passed away. Now, anybody has to think, what a horrible thing. Mm-hmm. So what are the people saying in Laramie Project? Are there people there, oh, he deserved it because he's gay? What kind of viewpoints are we hearing?
Yeah, well,
in the Laramie Project, it runs the full spectrum.
Right.
Obviously, there are people there protesting, gays, that they hate gays, protesting with signs, the gays should go to hell, really, really horrible protests.
Like Westboro Baptist Church things.
It is,
Yeah,
exactly
uh-huh.
that. And then, of course, the other extreme of activists coming in town and helping and standing behind the family to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty beautiful expression of that struggle within all of us to be as good as we can be.
Yeah.
And in the 10 years later, they actually come back to check on the people to see if there's been progress. What are their attitudes now? How do they feel now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite. They've shifted quite a bit.
More on the
Yeah.
compassionate side, more on...
It's interesting. A lot of the characters I play, Jeffrey Lockwood, who's a Laramie resident, and he tries to be very objective about it, and it seems like there's a group of people that are either in denial or they're just having a difficult time reflecting on it, and they're afraid, they're going to be still criticized as being a homophobic community, and then there are people who are also dealing some of the gay people of the town, like Jonas Slonaker. They won't talk about it. They won't discuss this issue
Because it's too painful
it's
to
too
revisit.
painful. It's too
Yeah.
painful to revisit.
A lot of people just want to move on.
Yeah.
That's said several times in the play. Can't we just forget this?
Yeah,
Move on.
let's get past it.
Yeah.
What an ugly chapter of that city's history to have to keep dredging up. I can
Yeah.
use.
And they've said several times, I think in Laramie Project and in 10 years later, this could have happened anywhere. It's not Laramie.
Yeah.
This is anywhere. So you have to keep telling the story. You have to, because it's still happening.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Every day you hear stories of abuse or murder or. So yeah, it's very important to keep hitting this home.
With the whole thing of Caitlyn Jenner and the picture being on the cover of Vanity Fair, and the things that you heard, comments that were made online, things that were said on Fox News. I mean, there's still some attitudes out there that need some pretty heavy duty adjustments.
Absolutely, there's some major ugliness out there that I don't know what it's going to take to erase that. Time, I don't know.
I think, if I may interrupt, I think that's another interesting perspective with both of these plays is they talk about how the media plays a part in shaping attitudes. And I haven't really followed the Bruce Jenner thing, but I wonder, if Bruce wanted it to go this way or if he wanted to do it for publicity, because I think he was having a television show to it. And so it's interesting to see that sometimes our intentions with what we want to get out can then be, turned toward a negative. So that's also something that they bring up in both plays is, how is the media shaped? For instance, for this particular production, 2020, about 6 years after the murder, did an interviewed the town, and they wanted to shape the piece toward it being not a hate crime, but that it was a robbery that was inspired by drugs. And so that was a big thing that in this play, 10 years later, that the residents had to deal with, is they knew the evidence says, no, it was a hate crime, but then everybody's turning on their televisions and they're watching 2020, and 2020 is implying that it was drug-induced. So
You're kidding me.
No. We even
no.
watched the interview to
I had
to
no
learn
idea.
about that. Yeah.
Oh, good heavens. Okay.
So
Well,
it's an interesting play as just an actor doing it on interpretation and people's viewpoints and how what you say can shape how something goes.
yeah. Well, now all of the actors in both productions play multiple characters.
Right.
And you mentioned that you play one of the townspeople in 10 Years Later, but you also, the thing about 10 Years Later that makes it, there's an extra added layer because the two murderers are actually, their voices are heard in this
Yes,
production.
not just their court records, but they went and actually interviewed them in prison. And Matthew gets to play Aaron.
Aaron McKinney.
So at the time that he's being interviewed, how long has he been in prison at this point?
About 10 years.
So when they're talking to him, first of all, what is it like to say the words of that person?
Well, it's interesting because as I look at someone like him, a very violent person, grew up in had a very violent lifestyle. That it's interesting, and to even start studying some sociopaths. It's when they talk about what they've done, they're able to just talk about it as if I'm discussing with you what's your favorite recipe, how to bake a cake. And so really it's like, well, I did this, and I did this, and I did this. So in a way, as an actor, you just, especially since we're trying to make these characters so authentic,
right,
because they are authentic, we don't want to turn it into an overdone theatrical exaggeration of this villain. But being authentic, he is just, yeah, I did that. It's almost like, so what? It's almost so what? So if you take time to look at it as the person reading it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is horrible.
Yeah.
The actor's process is you just need to go up and do it as if you're talking about baking a cake or
So he was matter of fact about it. Was there he did not express any repentance at all?
Not with Matthew Shepard. He was reluctant to admit that he killed Matthew because he was gay, but it finally comes out in the interview that he directly says, yes, I don't like gays. I have a hatred for them, but he doesn't express remorse. He doesn't express remorse. He goes on to say that. What does he go on to say? I'm trying to remember. He goes on to say that he heard that Matt. Rumors. He used this to justify himself. He said he heard that Matt was a sex predator.
Oh.
And so he uses that to justify his actions.
Right.
So, but the scary thing is he's aware. He's also self-aware that he is a criminal. He says it, I'm a criminal. I've always been like that, That's what I do. So it's really strange that he in one way knows that he's done a bad thing. Mm-hmm. In another way, doesn't,
total disconnect.
Disconnect that he did do a bad thing.
Now, Matthew Shepard's parents are also, their voices are heard in 10 years later.
Yeah. Judy Shepard is interviewed as well, and it takes place in the sequence of the play. It takes place right after the Aaron interview. So it's a really amazing, contrasting interviews. And her voice is really strong. She's gotten stronger and stronger and stronger through the years. She's had to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's really refreshing to hear their words.
Well, now this is all being staged black box, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any musical components at all to sort of evoke a mood or?
Well, the 10 years later, the first play, Laramie Project, comes with all sorts of accoutrements kind of built into it. There's protesters, there's video, there's music. It's just this whole bouillabaisse of things that they do. And in 10 years later, it's bare bones. There's nothing. It's just we're going to present the words. The words are the most important thing.
Interesting.
Just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And, of course, there was a temptation to throw in some stuff, but I was like, I'm just trusting the words.
Yeah.
So
what was your advice to your actors? Make this as real as you can make it?
Yes, that they have to be authentic, like we've said several times, and that they've got to engage the audience and tell the story and put enough life into it that's going to engage the audience and hold them. Mm-hmm. And that's a big challenge for actors.
It's a big responsibility for actors.
Yes.
Do you feel that responsibility?
Definitely, yes. I want to be as authentic as possible. But at the same time, for some of these characters, when they say something, their point of view is personal. I think some characters like Jeffrey Lockwood, he maintains some distance in trying to objectively talk about what's going on. And then you have some person like Representative Childers, who later on in the play they deal with what do they call it? Defense of Marriage Bill Act that comes up in Wyoming, And he's a Republican representative, and he gets up and he's against this Marriage of Bill Act because his daughter is actually gay, and he feels like this is going to tear us all apart, and he's against it. And so his point of view in being authentic, he's really infused with passion. So, you know, you have that. You want to be authentic. You want to deliver your lines as authentic, as natural as possible. But then, boom, 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 there's these moments where, oh man, this is personal to me. John Sloniker is one of those guys in the play that gets real passionate about what he has to say.
Well, I think it's the partnership between New Moon Theater Company and Emerald is terrific because people have the chance this weekend, since you're staging these shows at two separate venues, they can go on a Friday night to see the Laramie Project and then come back and Saturday night or Sunday afternoon and see 10 years later and really have that entire experience this weekend.
And there are two-for tickets available.
Oh, great.
So people can go to the website and get a discounted price if they're wanting to see both productions.
Okay.
So check that out, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, the Laramie Project opened last weekend, but you still have a chance to see it this weekend. Friday and Saturday performances at 8 with a Sunday matinee at 2, and that's being staged at Theater Works, 2085 Monroe. The Laramie Project 10 years later opens this Friday at the Evergreen Theater on Poplar and runs through June the 28th with performances Friday and Saturday at 8 o'clock and then another 2 o'clock Sunday matinee. And a talk back following the Saturday, June 20th performance. I think that's going to be really interesting to get people's reaction.
But the really great thing on this talkback is the cast from the Laramie Project is going to be there as well.
Oh, terrific.
And Den's going to be there, and we're just going to talk about the entire scope of all of it. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be very interesting. Well, Gene Elliott's directing the Laramie Project 10 years later. Den Nicholas Smith directing the Laramie Project. If you want more information about the shows, you can go to newmoontheater.org. You can also go to Emerald's website. That's etcmemphistheater.com. And for information, you can call New Moon at 484-3467. Gene Elliott directing the Laramie Project 10 years later. Matthew Hamner, a cast member from that production, and they've been my guest this afternoon. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kacky.